The core objective of strategic management is achieving a sustainable competitive advantage in a complex market. Within this environment, thousands of organizations are simultaneously fighting for the same market share, capital, and consumer attention. To navigate this, executives must identify the origin of their success. Does competitive advantage come from outward market forces or from inward firm capabilities? Misdiagnosing the primary driver of success leads to failures in how an organization allocates capital and resources. A leadership team that misidentifies these drivers will invest in assets that do not produce a return. Determining whether external forces or internal capabilities are the primary driver of results precedes the design of the actual strategy. Strategy requires reconciling two distinct and historically conflicting economic models. The first is the industrial organization, or IO model. This framework emphasizes the external environment. The competing framework is the resource-based model, which focuses on the internal organization of the firm. The IO model maintains a macro focus on the overarching industry grid, while the resource-based model shifts to a micro focus on the interior geometry of the firm. To build a complete strategic framework, managers must isolate the conflicting assumptions of each model. The IO model asserts that the external environment is the primary determinant of a firm's strategic actions. This geometric grid represents an industry where downward arrows illustrate how structure imposes rigid pressures on companies. These pressures restrict options to uniform pathways. Because decision-makers are profit-maximizing actors, they logically conform to reach the highest mathematical value available. This means industry characteristics, like barriers to entry or supplier power, override individual management creativity. Success becomes a function of choosing the right industry to enter, rather than how the firm operates internally. This model relies on the concept of competitor similarity. Competitors pursue similar strategies because they control strategically similar resources. These glowing particles represent labor and capital flowing frictionlessly across market boundaries. Any resource differences between competing firms are short-lived. If one firm gathers an advantage, those resources rapidly leak out and distribute equally across the industry. This high resource mobility means that specialized labor and capital move freely across firms. Any competitive advantage based on resources is immediately neutralized when competitors acquire those same resources. When resources are fluid and competitors are identical, internal strengths are irrelevant. Strategy is dictated purely by the industry's structural characteristics. The resource-based model completely rejects these initial assumptions. By zooming in to the internal structure of a single firm, we clearly see a much higher level of complexity. This model asserts that a firm's unique internal environment drives competitive advantage, not the industry structure. The first assumption here is that firms acquire distinctly different, heterogeneous resources, represented by these varied shapes and colors. We must distinguish between a resource, a raw input like capital, and a capability, which is the specific process of using that input. Firms develop distinct capabilities based on how they combine their resources. These resources merge into unique, interlocking gears that produce specialized outputs. Under this framework, the firm is a unique bundle of customized capabilities that cannot be found elsewhere in the market. These unique capabilities are sticky or immobile. This is what separates this model from the fluid IO approach. Resources and capabilities are not highly mobile across firms. When a competitor attempts to extract or copy these gears, the connection shatters. The capability is tethered to the firm. The proprietary technology, the corporate culture, and specialized human networks are examples of these immobile assets. Because these vital internal assets are fundamentally immobile, structural differences between firms persist over incredibly long periods, creating permanent market heterogeneity. These lasting, heterogeneous differences form the sustainable basis of competitive advantage and firm performance. Success depends on cultivating internal assets rather than reacting to industry structure. We are left with two opposing views, outside in versus inside out. Real-world decision-making requires synthesizing both. Notice how the external grid and the internal gears overlap into a single unified model. This approach accounts for both market constraints and the unique leverage of internal assets. Using only one model leaves an organization blind to half of the economic reality, risking either market irrelevance or operational collapse. This synthesis is applied operationally through two distinct scans. Managers use the I/O framework to scan the external environment to identify structural market opportunities and threats. Simultaneously, they apply the resource-based framework internally by assessing the internal organizational decisions. By seamlessly combining external environmental inputs with their own unique internal capabilities, firms consistently execute a highly robust system of strategic management.